Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, your guide to traveling, investing, and living beyond borders, where we talk about living the life that you want to live, where you want to live it.
All right, everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another Borderless Podcast, and I am recording this on 4th of July weekend. I hope that everybody enjoyed their 4th of July weekend, however it is that you chose to celebrate that. You know, there's a lot of history and a lot of things that goes along with that a lot of people forget, but I know that as far as this podcast goes, independence is something that we're all very interested in, and that's what it is Independence Day. So, do you feel independent? Do you feel free, maybe? I don't know, but things have certainly changed since 1776. To get us back into the mindset of what it was like during the real Independence Day, I wanted to share this quote, which I like a lot, and that was from Samuel Adams, and he says, "If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contests of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen." Again, that's Samuel Adams. Take that for whatever it's worth. I think it's a pretty good quote, and if people want to celebrate with some beer and hot dogs, that's fine, but let's also remember what it was all about in the first place. So what has gone on in the last week since I talked to you guys? Well, the big story has been the big fight between Donald Trump and the media, the failing media. But let's take Donald Trump out of the equation. He is a figurehead in the fight against much of the mainstream media in the United States. But what are we seeing? We're seeing the breakdown of the mainstream media, their narratives falling apart. And I think it's amazing. I know that you guys caught this Project Veritas, the sting operation. They have released 3 of them, which were pretty good. I don't know if they're going to do more of those, but, just really amazing stuff. Nothing, I'm sure, that a lot of you all didn't already know. So the media is pushing completely false narratives because they're in the pocket of corporations and other big donors, and, they have their own agenda. And this is something that's pretty obvious, but a lot of people don't realize it, and they just take the media's word like it's gospel or something, and it's incredible. But the more evidence that we have to point it out to people, the more we can get people to think for themselves, and the more that you can realize that you can think for yourselves, and you can look at other types of media like the Borderless Podcast, for instance. And I hope that you will do that, and I hope you will support the alternative media. We can break down the borders, the barriers, and a lot of the people that have been holding back information from us. Now we have the ability to do it. And so I think that this is a great thing. I think this also helps you as far as entrepreneurship, your businesses, investments, stuff like that, by having access to all this information and by recognizing what's good and what's bad. Then you can make your own decisions. So we've had some pretty interesting times the last week. Oh, and I wanted to mention that we are now on Steemit, Borderless Blog. All right, so you just go to Steemit, and it's at Borderless Blog. I've only put up one thing so far, but I'm going to put some more stuff on there and check that out, kind of learn how to use that. So, about today's interview, I have a guest on today who is not as optimistic, I should say, as some others are. Normally on the podcast, we have people on that can help you with different ways of navigating the information age. But today we have on Stefan Verstappen, and he is under the impression that, more than under the impression, he has studied this, and he's of the opinion that we are in one of the final cycles that we see in a lot of empires or societies, and we are on the cusp of what he calls the age of chaos. And there are a lot of implications for that, and he goes through what exactly that means. He's also written a book called The Art of Urban Survival, which is pretty good, has a lot of practical information on, if you are in some type of situation where you have to defend yourself, how can you think proactively about that? So if we are going into an age of chaos, as he points out, what can we do? What do we need to do to get ready for this? If you would like to read more into this, then I would recommend getting his book. Obviously, he expounds a lot more on all these different things. We can't do it in a 1-hour podcast. but a lot of information there. He sells books on his website, which are kind of survival books and stuff like that you can keep on a USB or some sort of a portable device in case something happens as far as electricity or something like that. It teaches you or gives you instructions on how to do a lot of things that you might not know, by heart how to do, and maybe you haven't even thought about, how to do a lot of different things. So he does that, and he's thought a lot about that. So I really enjoyed the interview, and I think that you will too. I hope that you will. And if you have any questions, you can always shoot them over, info@borderlessblog.com, or comment on the bottom at the website, and we'd be happy to take a look at that. So thanks a lot for listening again, and let's go to the interview.
Borderless.
All right, everybody. Today I have on the line Stefan Verstappen. He is a writer and world traveler. He is one of the first Westerners to travel freely to communist China in the mid-'80s. He has also written dozens of articles for various magazines and newspapers, and is the author of 8 books, including The Way of the Warrior, The 36 Strategies of Ancient China, and The Art of Urban Survival. He has also worked as an instructor for St. John's Ambulance, a wilderness guide, a community organizer, and a martial arts instructor with over 35 years experience in martial arts, including 5 years spent studying in China. He is the creator of the viral YouTube documentary Defense Against the Psychopath and the Paradise Stolen series and 140 other videos. So thank you very much for joining us today, Stefan.
Oh, you're very welcome, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Yeah, I think that you have a lot of good information, a lot of different subjects that you cover that would be interesting. And what I wanted to cover today is about self-defense. You have studied a lot about self-defense, especially in your martial arts studies, and you have applied that with your books such as the 36 Strategies of Ancient China and The Art of Urban Survival, which is a really good practical guide of things that people need to think about that, for some reason in our society, people think that it's paranoid or something to think proactively about securing your house and family and yourself. So you've gone through to have some stuff there that people can actually think about. So if you don't mind, maybe we could start out talking about the historical cycles that you have analyzed and why you think right now is a time that we should definitely be thinking about the art of urban survival.
Okay, so the theory of historical cycles is a very old theory. It goes back 4,000 years. The earliest historians wrote that they believed that history repeats itself, or at least it follows a certain pattern that repeats itself. And it's nothing new. And what I did with I have a short video out called Historical Cycles. And what I have done is I've taken the existing theories, and there's many of them. They go all the way back to the Upanishads. There's many different theories of what the cycles are, and what I've tried to do is find all the commonalities between everyone's different theory and sort of condense them into one that sort of explains everybody's theory as best as possible. And so what I've come up with is similar to what everybody else has come up with, in that there's basically 4 stages in every civilization. And these 4 stages, not surprisingly, correspond very much to the 4 seasons. So the first stage arises out of an era of chaos. And so this is the preceding dynasty or the preceding empire has collapsed, and it's gone now. The old order is gone, and now we're looking for a new order. And what happens is that strong men and innovators and entrepreneurs come forward, and they start to build on the ashes of the old empire. And this age is called the Age of Warriors, or the Age of Heroes. And it's also considered very much to be the preceding stage before a golden age. And so we can see things like, for example, when the first Europeans arrived on North America, and they had sort of a wild, untamed wilderness. And, of course, there were Native Americans who were living here, but, they hadn't actually really built much of a civilization. They were tribal. They didn't own property, and they were, busy at war with each other. And so the first pioneers came, and they chopped down the forests, and they built the farms, and cleared the farmland, and built the first towns and villages, and so this would correspond with the kind of heroic age. These guys were tough people.
Mm-hmm.
They built civilization out of those cold Midwestern winters, and they did it and there were numerous casualties. Many people died in their attempt to domesticate the country and to civilize it and to build up what we now know as our modern civilization.
Yeah, I always think about the people that came across, on the boats, some of the settlers to the United States. I mean, a tremendous percentage of people would die regularly, and they're for months on these wooden ships, and all kinds of disease, and it was really crazy circumstances. I can't imagine anybody in today's world going through something like that.
Yeah, it was horrific. And even the exploration and colonization of the West, we all have this image that of wagon trains heading to California, but wagon trains were only for a few people that could afford a wagon. The vast majority of people walked across the country pulling a two-wheeled cart, so you can imagine walking from St. Louis to San Diego, pulling a cart the whole way with all your belongings on the cart. And of course, you're subject to attacks the whole time as well. So these were tough people, and a lot of them died. And, contrary to popular or current immigration, where people come here, they get off the boat, they immediately get welfare and housing and food stamps and health and education and health benefits. When my parents came here as immigrants, there was no welfare, there was nothing. You got off the boat, most people had $10 in their pocket, and the first thing you did when you landed was go and look for a job, because that was the only way you could survive. So this is the heroic age. Then what happens after that is things get good for a while, because they've now built the towns, and they've now built the cities and the roads, and there's farms that are feeding people, and the population starts to grow after a lot of people getting killed in the early stages trying to settle and trying to rebuild on the old civilization. And this happens in China and Europe and Rome and Japan. I mean, every major civilization in the world seems to have gone through these cycles. So the next stage is then called the intellectual stage. So we've had these tough guys, sacrifice their lives to build this country or build the civilization or build their empire. And now things are pretty good. People are, they can take it a little bit more easy. And so at this stage, what they do is they start to build universities and libraries. And the emphasis starts to become more focused on intelligence and inspiration and art and science and innovation. So the first age, you needed tough lumberjacks, explorers, mountain men, warriors to, explore and conquer and tame the wilderness. Now that that's done, we can move on to the next level. And this again follows very similar to what immigrants to the country do naturally themselves. The first generation that came over, the Italians that came over in the 1920s, they all went to work at tough jobs. They didn't become university professors. They were construction workers and bricklayers and electricians and plumbers. And, these are tough manual labor kind of work, but now that they have succeeded in buying a house in the suburbs and they've got kids and a family, they want their kids to go to university, right? So it's similar to the universal cycle of civilizations. After the tough work is done, establishing the basis of a civilization, the civilization evolves more into an intellectual stage. So that lasts for a while. And again, there's no hard or set rule as to how long each stage lasts. That now the intellectual stage will evolve into what's called the merchant stage. And what happens then is that, the focus is now on making money and doing business and opening up businesses and becoming rich, And the same thing you can see with the immigrants. The early Italian immigrants worked hard. They sent their kids to school so that the kids can become lawyers. And now the they want to make money. They want to become rich, become upper middle class. And in the early stages of the merchant age, things aren't too bad. It's usually during the merchant age where there is what is known as upward mobility. People that work really hard and can make a lot of money, they can now find themselves in the middle class or the upper middle class or even in the upper class, Whereas usually under those stratified, like during the medieval ages or during under empires that have been around for a while, the social hierarchy is really stratified and kind of locked in that, unless you're born an aristocrat, you can never become an aristocrat. But that's not true during the merchant age. People that make enough money can, buy their titles if they want to. Mm-hmm. However, the merchant age is the beginning of the end, because what happens with the merchant age is that the focus becomes purely on money. And with that comes corruption. And with that corruption comes government corruption. And then with government corruption comes crime. And what happens is everybody is, and we can see ourselves, this is the stage we are in right now, is the latter age of the merchant age, or the latter times of the merchant age, where we don't have Henry Ford's opening up factories anymore. Instead, what we have is S&Ls and Goldman Sachs and the Federal Reserve, and what they're doing is just sucking the money out of everybody through endless schemes and cons and cheats and frauds. Right. And that's what happens, And now we find ourselves in a civilization which is, it's obscene in its greed and horror, because we are forced under this system to literally or figuratively cut each other's throat for $1. I have to screw you, James, so I can get ahead, and you have to screw Bob so you can get ahead, and Bob has to screw, Billy. I mean, this is the system that we are up against now. And look around you. I see it everywhere I go. Everybody is worried about money. Yep. That's all everybody thinks about: how to make money, how to reduce my bills, how I can get out of trying to pay all these taxes. And by the way, we pay 80% of everything we spend and earn on taxes, which is so obscene that it's mind-boggling that we've allowed the government to get away with robbing us of 80%. Because it's not just your money, it's your life, it's your soul that they're sucking out of you. Because now you have to work 60 hours a week. You have to take on a full-time job and a part-time job and make some money on the side because, well, first of all, the government takes 80%, and then the banks and everybody else is trying to screw you for the 20% you've got left, So, but that's your life, your life spent in traffic, commuting to jobs and sitting at a desk or some menial, factory work, to pay the bills. And your life is passing you by. That's time you don't spend with your family. That's time you're not out in the country on a camping trip. That's time you're not enjoying the sunset over the lake. I mean, they're stealing that from us. So
I completely agree. And, I try to give people on the podcast, we have a lot of different people that come on and we try to talk about ways that maybe you can work differently, you can change your life around in order to have a little bit more control over your money and the taxes that you're spending and your cost of living. And, like you're saying, is there a way that you can get around going to a job every day, and maybe you can do a different type of activity in order to gain money? Another thing I wanted to say is that I see that reflected in the kind of rock star image of entrepreneurs. I've noticed that, in my life, last, 10 or 20 years or something, the biggest rock stars are the people that everybody looks up to, that are the highest people in society, are entrepreneurs. And a lot of times they are tied in one way or another. They're getting subsidies and stuff like this, like Elon Musk, for instance. But everybody, worships the entrepreneur, when, there is all kinds of different roles for people. You have people that are intellectuals, and you have people that are artisans, and you have not everybody, I don't see why it's necessarily true that an entrepreneur is the greatest type of person that you can be,
Sure. And the fact that everybody, looks upon entrepreneurs as rock stars is a reflection of us living in the merchant age. Because 100 years ago, people would be looking up to people like intellectuals like Mark Twain and Nietzsche and Goethe, and these were the intellectuals and the poets that were doing the heavy thinking work. And before that, they were looking up to the warriors. Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett and Andrew Jackson, and these were the heroic characters that everybody wanted to be a hero in those days. So now we are in the merchant age, and yes, I know I think about that all the time, how to escape this trap, but we are ruled by a bunch of psychopaths that have taken over our government, and the psychopaths are closing off all avenues of escape. See, the thing would be is, if I could start a business and work for myself, and then I'm my own boss, and then, if I can earn enough money and reduce my my expenses, then, I can live a modest life and at least allow myself some time to enjoy life. But they're shutting that down. Yes, we all want to be entrepreneurs, but let's face it, you got to have a lot of money behind you. You can't start 50 years ago, people were able to start a business with $50, work, just go to the office, government office, register a business, put an ad in the paper, and then off they went and built their business from next to nothing. You can't do that anymore. The rules, the regulations, the taxes, the permits, the licenses that have come into play in the last 80 years. It's just obscene, but it's all done so that you can't escape. The government and the psychopaths that control it want to enslave you, and they've done a really good job. You're enslaved to the fiat currency system, and they're closing down all avenues of escape. So even though, yes, I can laud some of the entrepreneurs that have built businesses and managed to escape the 9 to 5, 9 to 12
right.
Rat race. Nobody works 9 to 5, please. It's 9 to 12. The 9 to 12 rat race that everybody's in, but they want to make sure you can't get out of that. So they've closed down a lot of those avenues.
Right. The final stage you have here as chaos. I thought it was pretty remarkable because I saw a video that you did about this stage, and you were talking about a lot of things, and this video was made a few years ago, but kind of funny. A lot of things that you're mentioning to look out for in that video are things that are definitely coming to pass now. So what are some of the things that we might expect from the age of chaos?
Well, what happens at the end of the merchant stage is that the greed and corruption gets out of hand. You can't run a society where everybody is at each other's throats. And you can't run a society where the money is stolen. There's no money left after the government and banks are finished stealing it to do anything. So infrastructure starts to break down, and pretty soon, there's not going to be no retirement pension, no safety net, no food stamps. I mean, they're going to run out of that. It's not an endless source of resources that the government can continue pillaging without taking it from the people that need it. And so what happens is you'll see an increase in crime. Now, we're already seeing that, but, wait until they stop food stamps and people are now really hungry, and if you've ever gone 4 days without food, you become desperate and you will do anything to eat. And so people that are now okay, but once they're hungry, they will kill you, Right. And so that's why the age of chaos usually tears down the civilization. We've seen this in Rome after the fall of Rome, but look at what happened before the fall of Rome, the decadence and the welfare state that they had, and the number of lunatic emperors from Caligula, Nero, and Commodus, and, endless series of lunatics, just like we have now, an endless series of lunatics in the White House. Mm-hmm.
And another group I think about is the boomers, because the pension system is not doing so great, and they're going to have to eventually do something with the Social Security system. So I don't, what's going to happen with all these boomers. A lot of them have they have not saved anything at all, and they have no. I don't know what they're going to do. Just die or what?
Yeah, they're going to die.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's going to happen. And a lot of people are going to die. During the age of chaos, there's a drastic reduction in population. Now, we all think it can't happen. But the thing is, and then, like you said earlier, well, you're paranoid if you think it can happen. Well, read history.
Yeah.
Read history.
Absolutely.
I mean, history is an endless tale of corruption and evil and empires and collapse and mass murders and genocides. I mean, we have been really lucky for the last 70 years. We haven't had a major world war. And, the U.S. government hasn't opened fire on innocent civilians. Mm-hmm. They did that. Starting back in the 1830s, okay, let's not forget that the U.S. government sent out the National Guard to shoot striking mine workers in Colorado back in the 1850s, mm-hmm. and they will do it again. But it's just a matter of time. I mean, these are you know what's that saying? You can escape reality, but you can't escape the consequences of ignoring reality.
Yeah, I think that's Ayn Rand. I think.
Yeah, Ayn Rand, exactly. So, we can all just, sit around looking at our smartphone and texting each other and making duck lip selfie photos of ourselves, Okay, that's fine. Keep looking at that damn thing,
right.
But what's going on behind the scenes is unstoppable, and that is the flow of history, and it will catch up to us.
Do you think that, so we're talking a lot about the United States, but... this cycle, does this apply to all countries, or is the United States and the West so all-encompassing right now that it's going to affect everything, or how do you see it, as a global phenomenon?
Well, normally it wouldn't engage all countries. For example, Rome rose and fell, and when Rome fell, China was building its famous Han Dynasty. Mm-hmm. So the fall of Rome did not affect China. But now we're all linked, and we're all linked thanks to these idiots that are, trying to set up globalism, mm-hmm. because separate companies are like, I think Michael Raviro made this analogy, and he's correct. Separate countries are like the water bulkheads in a ship. You can, if one fails and fills up with water, you still have other bulkheads that keep the ship afloat. But what we're doing now is with international trade and with the fiat currency affecting every Western country and now China and Japan and everything, it looks like it's going to be a worldwide collapse, which is even more terrible. So, if you think you're paranoid already, at least when Rome fell, Romans could run to France, or they could run to Greece, or they could run to Germany and escape it. Now there's no place to run to. I know some people think, South America, where they're going to run there, but again, South America is dependent on the petrodollar and the fiat currency, just like every other country in the world. So now there is nowhere to run to. So America and Europe is going to be hard hit. Maybe not all of Europe. Maybe Russia will escape. Maybe some of the Eastern Baltic countries might escape the worst of it. But certainly Western Europe and United States, Canada, and probably Australia, New Zealand, we will all feel the worst effects of the coming collapse. And it's going to collapse. Now, hopefully not within our lifetime. Mm-hmm. Let's hope it's for another 50 years. Let's hope your grandchildren get to die for it, for our sins, But that's what these boomers are doing, right? Like, right. So I get my pension. I don't care. My grandchildren, are they going to get slaughtered in the streets? Well, too bad for them. But, as long as I get to have my vacation in Florida every year.
Yeah. No, and I hate to do the intergenerational warfare thing. It's kind of another divide and conquer thing. But I'll tell you, when I do talk to a lot of boomers, they have that mentality. It's just like, well, I'm not going to pass down anything else. I'm just going to use every dollar that I have. I have no savings. I'm just going to live off the next generation. And it's just like, that's not going to last. And so.
Yeah, I'm a boomer, and I despise my generation. I really do, because they sold out, and I never sold out, James. Mm-hmm. I have never bought into this Walmart, right. mentality ever. I never went shopping. I never owned a house. I don't care if I own a late model car. I had nothing to do with fashion or sports, and I never did. Mm-hmm. And I saw my generation. We started off almost, pretty good, it was like, we had this back to the earth movement and, down with the state and the sort of mid-50s kind of ethic of, go to the job and get a house in the suburbs thing. But they all sold out, all of them, almost all of them. There's one or two old hippies, but they've all sold out, and it's a disgrace, and they should all be ashamed of themselves. And not only did they sell out, to me, the biggest crime is that they didn't teach their own children anything of value. And at least if you're going to sell out, at least teach your own children, like, this is the way the world works, and this is what you need to have a decent life. And we are too cowardly to do it ourselves because we sold out, but at least you should know that that's the way the world works.
Right.
But they didn't even do that. They spread the same lies and fantasies onto their children, who spread it onto their children, which are now the millennials. And as most people can confirm, the millennials are hopelessly lost and may never, ever recover to any level of functioning anymore.
Right. I mean, there's obviously lots of different, kinds of knowledge that one needs to live a good life. But there's one part of knowledge that I think is really affecting us right now. And that is that a lot of the boomers have not taught their male children, or else maybe they didn't have a father, some of the millennials, and they don't know how to be masculine. They don't know how to stand up for themselves. They don't. It's just just kowtowing to all this emotional stuff, and and you can't run a society like that. And there's just so many men in the Western society specifically that they're just I don't know what you would even just they say the word cuck, but whatever you want to call it, just very feminized men. So that's, I think that's
they've been emasculated and castrated. They're eunuchs. We have a whole generation of eunuchs. For those listeners that don't know what a eunuch is, that's when they took slaves and they castrated them so that they wouldn't have the testosterone to stand up against their slave masters. And this is done on purpose. This is what evil empires always do. They try to destroy the aggressive masculine principles within a society because, well, it's men that rise up against tyranny. And so if you're a tyrant, you want to downplay masculinity as much as possible for fear that these people will eventually say, look, we're tired of being slaves. Maybe we should take back our freedom. So that's what's happened, and it's been a process in play for over 100 years now to destroy everything masculine. And which brings me to my most recent book, The Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior, which is not a conspiracy book. There's no conspiracy theory in it. What it is the culmination of my 40 years experience, not only as a martial arts instructor, but as a wilderness survival instructor and a trainer for at-risk youth. I used to take them up into the woods on canoe trips for a week at a time and teach them how to camp and survive and, try to reinstill self-confidence, but real self-confidence, not this phony, fake confidence where everybody gets a participation medal and nobody has to risk anything. Nobody has to try and risk failure. Everybody's a winner. You're all winners. You're all special. Nonsense. You're not all special. There's a few really good people in the world, and the rest are pretty much useless. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but the vast majority are idiots, Right. And because they're idiots, they're losers too. I know I hate to be blunt like this because, the Pollyanna view of the society now is that everybody is special and everybody has something to offer society. No, bullshit. They don't have anything to offer society. Most people have absolutely nothing to offer society. Right. What they do, they're flotsam, they're chaff, and they will never be anything. Now, those are the people the government appeals to. This is where communism comes into, and socialism, and that's our government, yours and mine here in Canada, our communist governments. Let's forget about democracy or a republic. That's all ancient history now. We live under a socialist system, and what the socialists do is they know, 80% of the people are losers. So what they do to them is they say, look, you're a loser, right? And look at all these people that are better looking than you and wealthier than you and
It's
taller
their
than
fault.
you.
They took it from you.
They took it from you, exactly. So you rile up the mob, right? And you get the mob to rob the few people in society that actually produce something and take them down. And then the tyrants are happy because they're safe, because the mob will never go after the real tyrants. The mob will only tear down their own people within their own society. And, look, it even happens within families. You have whole families where most of those people in that family are awful, and then you have one or two, a son or a daughter that really wants to better themselves, and they go out in the world and they get their own education, they start their own businesses, they live their own life and the rest of the family hates them.
Something that I noticed, I don't know if maybe this is just me, but something that I noticed when I go out, I don't know if this is how it usually is, or if this today's society. I see a lot of times like the coddling of the people that are the weakest. Now, I don't think we should run rimshot over the weakest people. What I'm saying is, for example, they'll let the kids go run around like crazy and do whatever they want all over a pool or something. And to me, it's like, look, I'm paying for this. You can give the kids some time, but they need to be controlled while doing it. But it's almost like they always give the weaker people, or the people that are supposed to be subject to the ones that are organizing the whole thing. They put them in control to let them do whatever they want to.
Sure.
So
yeah, and that's done on purpose, because you want them to tear down the people that can do something.
Right.
So you turn everybody against each other, right? So this is a common tactic. It's called, in the 36 strategy, it's called trouble the water to catch the fish. And what they do is you just cause a lot of trouble. Black Lives Matter. That's a prime example. You have these people now believing that they had been slaves. Slavery has been gone for 150 years now. But boy, oh boy, you bring up anything and they're slaves. Well, yes, you are slaves, but you're not slaves to the white man. You're in the same slave pen as everybody else.
Yeah.
You're in the same slave pen as me. So you're no more of a slave than I am a slave, and I'm a white man. Mm-hmm. We're all in the same slave pen, right? But the slave owners want you to fight me instead of you and me join to fight them. And so that's what this is all about. Now, I know it sounds arrogant of me when I say, 80% of the population. I mean, these are statistics. It's the bell curve. It's IQ distribution. There's nothing that I'm saying that's not true or that's supremacist in any way. And personally, I have nothing against these people. I mean, in my own life, I'm a working class hero. I've hung out on Skid Row and drank beer behind the dumpster with homeless people. I mean, I get along with them. I mean, I get along with the working class people better than I get along with rich people. But here's what's happened is that we've allowed the psychopaths that control the world to brainwash and control these, simpler people. You see, if there were benevolent people in charge, then the people with an IQ under 100 wouldn't be used to destroy our civilization. They would have wonderful, productive lives and have happy family lives and, go for picnics on the weekend. I mean, there's nothing wrong with people that have an IQ under 100. I mean, they can be just as good and productive and loving and as anybody else. But what's happened is that, the 20% of us that have, a slightly above average intelligence that should be in charge of the state machinery have relinquished any influence on our society, and we've relinquished it to psychopaths who are training and indoctrinating and propagandizing and controlling the rest of the population. And that's why we have social justice warriors, and that's why we have political correctness, and that's why we have Black Lives Matter, because they can't think for themselves, and they've been programmed through the school system and the media. And so now they've been turned into enemies. If it was me, if I was in charge, of a big movie studio or something like that, I would make movies that would empower these people to live happy lives and not feel miserable and blame all their misery on a few people that, have made something out of themselves.
Right. Well, I could talk about this for a long time, but I do want to get to some of the practical self-defense stuff. So now we find ourselves in this, precarious situation here. And like I said before, I would always recommend that anytime, you want to be thinking about self-defense and being proactive about where you live and, where you take your family and all this type of thing and being prepared. And you write a lot about that in The Art of Urban Survival. So how can somebody start with thinking proactively about their own self-defense and that of their family?
Yeah, I know it's hard to pick a point where to start on this, because first of all, when you start talking about, like you said again, people are going to think you're paranoid, and people say to me too, they say, well, I don't want to think about that because that will just preoccupy my thoughts and it'll make me depressed or something like this, and I'm not depressed. For example, I'm prepared. I've got some skills. I got some extra food. I got a little bit of gold and silver. I have a couple of firearms. And now I don't worry about it. I don't have to think about it because I am prepared. Whatever comes down the pipe, I'm ready for it. So I don't think about it every day, and I'm not afraid, And so that's the best advice I can tell people is, take some precautions now and then forget about it, But if you don't take any precautions, if you're completely unaware, completely unprepared, then even a small glitch in our society, a little downturn, is going to be catastrophic for you.
Right.
Like if something happens, let's say some war breaks out or the grid collapses or the monetary system collapses. Well, it might last, 6 months, a year, it might last 2 years, Like I told people, because they said, oh, it's so depressing. I said, yeah, but look at the people that lived in Europe in 1940, okay? They went through 5 years of war where, their cities were being bombed into ruin. There were armies coming through with tanks, millions of people who were killed. Then 1950, everybody's got a good job, They got barbecues on the weekends in the backyards. They've got a car. They're driving on the Autobahn. I mean, it's over now, So these people lived through that kind of horror. I don't think I'm hoping we're not ever going to see something that bad. But even if it does happen, if you can make sure that you survive for a year or 2 years, then things will get better again.
Right.
So the thing is, it's not this apocalyptic end of the world extinction level event. If that happens, okay, well then we're all dead and there's nothing you can do about it. But I think the likelihood of something apocalyptic happening is very, very light. And then again, you can't really prepare for any apocalypse anyways.
Right. I want to tell a story that happened to me. I was in Acapulco, and there was a tremendous storm. And it knocked out the bridges that were coming into the city, also knocked out the potable water. It also, it was just raining a lot. Nobody could get in or out of the city. All the shelves on in the grocery stores were cleaned out. Within 1 or 2, maybe 3 hours, they were completely gone. So you have no water, you have no internet, you have no electricity. There's no way of getting in or out of the city. And the bridges were down for a week. So I was lucky that I was in a hotel that was in the nice area, the vacation area. So they, scrambled in order to get us electricity, quicker than everybody else. There was a lot of other people that were in ruins, the locals of Acapulco, on the outsides of the city that, they were in ruins for months. I mean, a lot of them, their whole houses got washed away and stuff, and nobody cared. But they rushed to help the tourist area because, that's how they make all their money. And so maybe it was after 4 or 5 days, you got electricity, eventually got internet, and then we had potable water probably 3 weeks later. I also had a lot of water and food saved up because I had been staying in this. I had a pretty big hotel room, and I'd been staying there for a while, and I had accumulated a lot of water and things like that. Another kind of funny point about that is that I was working for a guy who was a big, Bitcoin pusher, and he's all Bitcoin. This is going to be great when there's a crisis. And I had a lot of gold, silver, and cash, dollars and Mexican pesos stacked. And so when the crisis hit, my boss had no use for his Bitcoins, and he had to come and beg me for cash.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's just kind of a funny story that so it can happen at any time. Maybe we can start with that kind of
Sure.
traveling. I talk a lot about traveling, people that are going to different countries and stuff like that. What are some steps that you can take? Obviously, it's always better to have a firearm. One of the things I really hate about being in countries outside the United States is that I can't have a firearm, but, it's just a sacrifice, so knowing that that's the situation, what are some other things that I can do to compensate and to think before I'm traveling to another country?
Okay, well, let me get back to what your story, and I want to just address that first. So, yes, it can happen at any time, a storm, an earthquake, a chemical spill, and suddenly you are plunged for a week, 2 weeks, a month into the Stone Age. No electricity, no water, no transportation, no telephone, no internet.
Yep.
And so what are you going to do? So the first thing everybody should do right away, or as soon as possible, because during a catastrophe or a natural disaster, most of the casualties occur in the first 3 days, right? So you need to be able to survive for 3 days, first of all. So I always recommend everybody needs to get, first off, 3 days worth of food. Make sure you have that in your cupboard. And 3 days is good. It's not great. So what I would do after that is get 3 weeks worth of food and water. It doesn't cost that much, if it's Roman noodles or cans of brown beans and pork, whatever. Get 3 weeks worth of food and 3 weeks worth of water, and store that in your apartment, in your motorhome or your house, and that will be the most important, survival tool, because again, like you said, the store shelves are empty in 3 hours, and if you're hungry, then you're going to be weak, and you're going to take chances and risks to try and find food that you might not need to take those risks if you had food in the house, and you'll get injured. Anyways, food, number one. Number two is a medical kit. Make sure if you are on medication, make sure you have stockpiled your prescription, at least a week's worth. And again, I prefer 3 weeks worth of medication. So if you have to take heart pills or diabetic pills or something like that, make sure you have 3 weeks worth supply for an emergency, because you're not going to be able to go to the pharmacy and go, refill your prescription. A good first aid kit, not some crappy little first aid kit that you buy at the store, with a couple of Band-Aids. Get something decent. You're going to need, from my experience in first aid, is you need lots of bandages, not Band-Aids, but I mean bandages, roller bandages, triangular bandages, pressure bandages, the big thick pads that you put over an open wound and you can wrap it up. Those will save lives. So a good first aid kit. And then the other point is communications. You need some way to communicate to the outside world. So when your experience was, and with your boss, well, no access to Bitcoin. So too bad for you, because you don't have internet and you don't have TV. So the very minimum of what you need to have is an emergency radio, so that when the lights go off, and I'm telling you, if you're sitting at home and suddenly the lights go off, you are clueless as to what's going on, right? You can't turn on the TV, you can't turn on the internet. Is there an invading army? Is the aliens landed? As a volcano exploded? You have no idea. Is there a giant lava flow heading your way and you should be running like crazy? You won't know about it because you don't have any communications. So you need a radio, any kind of a one that gets like a weather radio, kind of a crank up radio that you can, recharge yourself, or has, ways of recharging it. They're cheap, they're small, they're portable, but get one, because otherwise you don't know. A step up from that, and what I have is a ham radio. So because I know the last time we had a week-long blackout here, I tuned into the sports, the emergency radio, and the radio stations had no information, AM, FM, weather station, no information as to what was going on. Then I fired up the ham radio and I tuned into the emergency services trunk line, which is a radio frequency where ambulance, fire department, and police all call into a central switchboard to describe their situation. And within 5 minutes, I knew everything that was going on in the city, which roads had been closed down, where the police were, how many people were swept away in floodwaters, and how many people were stuck in elevators. I mean, if you can get a police scanner or a ham radio, that's a step up. Get one of those because you will get way more information. And during a crisis situation, the more information you have, the better. Mm-hmm. Finally, security. Now, under security, I include things like tools and weapons as well. So if you can't have a firearm, there's other methods. And in my book, The Art of Urban Survival, I also offer several dozen improvised weapons that you can have as well. We always think, and because of the movies and the TVs, that, when something happens, there's going to be roving gangs running around raping and murdering everybody. And that doesn't really happen. It happens in some neighborhoods, but those neighborhoods are always bad. So during a crisis, they're just a little bit worse. So I'm not really, that gung-ho on having all kinds of weapons. But what a weapon does, and the reason I like to have a weapon, and everybody should have a weapon, is that it's what's called a threat display. And a threat display is it discourages attack. So, for example, if you and your wife are walking down the street and it's just the two of you, and there's 4 gang members looking at you like you're an easy target, well, you're an easy target. If you and your wife are walking down the street and you both have a baseball bat in your hand, different story. Maybe there's an easier target somewhere else. So threat display dissuades attack. It prevents people from attacking you because you look dangerous. The same thing happens in the wild. A tiger or a lion will, always attack the weakest of the herd. They're not going after the bull elephant, or they're not going after the male bull and attacking them. They're going after the ones that look weak, the ones that are older, the ones that look sick, and the young animals. And the reason for that is that the tiger and the lion, as powerful as they are, if they get injured, they're dead, because then they can't hunt and they'll starve to death. So even though, they could easily kill a bull, if that bull should happen to gore them just a little bit, that tiger will get an infection and he'll die in a week. And they know that. So they always pick out the easiest targets. Now, human predators will do the same thing. They'll choose weaker looking victims. So a weapon makes you look more powerful and it will dissuade attack. So even, if you're not prepared to use a weapon, for example, a gun, like everybody says, just that gun. I have a very weak powered gun. I mean, it's nothing. It's nowhere near some assault level or a rifle or anything like that. It's just a simple hunting rifle. It's not even got a big magazine or anything like that. But guess what? If I have a rifle, any kind of rifle, people are going to leave me alone. I don't need a machine gun, because just any kind of a weapon will already be enough to dissuade attack.
Did you see that there was a viral video with, I think it was a Chinese woman, it was an Asian woman at least, and she had 3 black robbers that had gotten into her house, and she came running out with a handgun and just kind of shooting it at the ceiling. It was pretty obvious she had no idea how to shoot it, but she was kind of shooting it in their direction, and they all just went running out the door. So she had no idea how to use it. It was just a little handgun, and it got 3 grown men running away. So,
sure. And actually, there's dozens of videos like that where, the victim pulls out some kind of a gun, shoots it up in the air, and I mean, probably that's what I would do. I mean, if I was attacked, I would shoot a warning shot up in the air, But just the very first time they hear a shot, they all go running, right, crashing through doors to get out. Those videos are funny. But that's what happens. The minute you put up any kind of a serious looking defense, you don't have to be, a Navy SEAL or anything like that and do, double taps to everybody's forehead. No, 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 no. Just fire a shot up in the air and they'll be running anyways because they don't want to take the risk that they get hurt. So any kind of a weapon, if it's a baseball bat, if it's a cane, if it's a sword, a spear. Yeah. Spear, by the way, is one of the best weapons in the world. Completely, everybody always forgets about it. Tie a butcher knife to the end of a pole. Nobody can get near you.
Yeah. I heard in another interview you saying that I thought it was a good point, and it seems obvious, but you're saying when you're in a house, even if it's a hotel room or whatever it is that you happen to be at the moment, you want to think. You want to have something that you can grab if somebody does break in or something like that. You don't just want to be, just sit there with, what in your hand. You know what I mean? Like you want to have something that you can grab and some sort of a plan about, even if it's just a pot or a stick or anything.
Anything, yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Because, and this is the rule of combat anyways, a weapon always trumps empty hand,
Mm-hmm.
So, even if you're a karate guy, like I'm a kung fu guy and all that, I'm still going to pick up a weapon. I'm not going to, if I get, I usually have one close by,
Right.
I have a cane. I find a cane is one of the greatest weapons because, first of all, nobody thinks you're carrying a weapon when you walk with a cane, right? Mm-hmm. And because of its size and its strength and it's very easy to use, it's a very effective weapon. I would use that against, and you can carry it everywhere without drawing suspicion. So you will always have a weapon on you. Mm-hmm. And I teach people how to use a cane. It's not hard.
Okay.
Very effective. I taught a blind woman how to fight with a cane, and close-in techniques, jujitsu stuff, like it's not like a long-range weapon at all. That's the guy can come in on you with a bear hug or whatever, and if you got that cane on you, he's toast,
Yep. So let me ask you about some specific things that you have in your book. We could just go quickly over some of these things because you have a number of different situations. So, for instance, carjacking. What can you do to think proactively about a defense against carjacking?
Okay, well, for all crime situations, every kind of a criminal activity, your best defense is avoidance and evasion. You do have to spend a little bit of time, and it's in my book. Get the book, The Art of Urban Survival, and I explain how criminals work in all these different types of situations. And in the military, it's called situational awareness. And everyone that's listening should maintain situational awareness anytime you're out anyways. I mean, just to avoid, for example, I remember one time when I was driving, I'm always aware of things around me in 360, and I was stopped at a red light, and normally everybody just stares blindly ahead, but I'm still checking my rear view mirror, and son of a gun, I see this guy barreling down. Obviously, he didn't see the red light. Obviously, he didn't see me and 4 other cars stopped in front of him. He's coming at full tilt, and I saw him coming, and at the last minute, I was able to get my car angled out of the line of attack, and he clipped me, and he smashed into the cars in front of me. So being aware all the time around you is your best preventative technique. And so that means put down the damn cell phone. Don't be staring at this goddamn cell phone while you're walking down the street. You're just making yourself a target. So with carjackings, there's a technique where they called boxing you in, okay? And one of several techniques, and that's where what they'll do is they'll spot you. You're driving a nice car. You look like you're a tourist. You look like you got money. So they'll have one car come up in front of you, and they'll wait to a red light, and then they'll stop. Now you pull in behind him, right? Now what they'll do then is they'll have a second car that comes up behind you, and they'll pull in really close, even touching bumper to bumper with you. Now you're boxed in, right? Now the guys in the car behind you would jump out. They'll run around to the side of the car, and your side door windows are meant to shatter easily, okay? So it's really easy. It's not like the front screen. The windshield is very difficult to smash because it's got this laminate that prevents fragments from breaking. But I've broken into side door windows, and it's really easy. They use often a spark plug. They just throw it, and the tensile and the hardness of the spark plug will instantly shatter the side door window. So even if you're sitting in your car with the windows rolled rolled up and the door is locked, that is no protection for you, right? So once they've boxed you in, they come around the side, smash the window. They can, stick a knife or a gun in your face, pull you out, take your car, take everything you own, or even worse, take you. So a simple technique to avoid that is when you're driving, and especially in the country where carjackings, or in a neighborhood where carjackings are, more popular or more often occur, then when you come to a stop, you never pull up that close to the car in front of you. And then if you see somebody coming up behind you and they come in really tight on your bumper, you still have left yourself. You need at least 6 feet between you and the car in front of you, okay? And I always do that. I always stop with plenty of room between me and the car in front of me. That's how I was able to get out of the line of fire when this lunatic was, came smashing down the street and crashed into the cars in front of me. I had enough room to pull forward by, turning the wheel hard to the right, gunning it, and getting out of the way. And that's what you would do for carjacking.
Okay. Kidnapping,
yeah. So, the thing is it's best, especially in certain countries where these things occur more often, is always travel with a group of people, never travel alone. And you need to kind of plan a little bit with your group of people what you're going to do if you get kidnapped. Because what you want to do is have one person escape and be able to alert the authorities right away. Kidnapping is difficult to defend against for a number of reasons. And there's quite a bit we can go into, but it's going to take a little bit longer. It's the same as with other tactics. You have to be careful about who you allow into your personal space. You always need to maintain what I call a safe space. So a safe space is an imaginary circle that's about 12 feet around you, okay? 12 feet to the left, 12 feet to the front, 12 feet behind you. And anybody that comes into that space, you have to be aware of. And if you don't like the looks of that person, you have to maintain that space. So if they're walking to you from the front and they get into your space and you don't like the way they look, it's best to go lateral instead of back and forward. It's best to go sideways. So cross the street and go to the other side of the street before they can get closer than 12 feet. And then also when I see somebody coming in front of me that I don't like the looks of, I always look behind me. It's a very common tactic. This happened to a friend of mine when we were traveling in Morocco. And, he was down at the train station, which after dark, it turned out, was a dangerous place to be. And a Muslim guy came up in front of him and said, "Well, you got a light for a cigarette?" And I always tell everybody, don't let anybody stop you on the street. Don't let strangers stop you on the street, not for a match, not for a cigarette, not for directions. Right. Because if it's in a bad neighborhood or you're in a bad city, they're not stopping you to get a light. They're stopping you to detain you. Mm. And what they're doing is they're distracting you from the front. Oh, you got a light or something like that. Can I bum a cigarette? You got some spare change, whatever. But what that does is that sets you up for an attack from behind. And this guy, sure enough, he got attacked from behind. So you need to maintain that, situational awareness. So if somebody is distracting you, okay, maintain that space. If you maintain that 12-foot distance from the person in front of you, that will still give you the 3 seconds it will take for you to quickly look behind you and make sure that you're not being set up for an ambush from behind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of good advice here, and you have a full book on all different types of situations like that and some things that you need to keep in mind. You also have several other books that are very interesting that people should definitely look up. I'm going to have that on the blog post today. So thank you for the work that you've done, and thanks for doing the podcast with me today.
My last word of advice is from Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Know your enemy. So know the people in government, know how psychopaths work, know how criminals operate, understand how they behave and how they work, and that is your best defense.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, James.
Okay, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for the Borderless podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders.